All right, welcome to the, I guess, is this the September or is this the October?
Technically,
It's the October.
meeting, but it's tied to the planning commission meeting. So.
Welcome to the October meeting for the Ttcda. Looks like we've got a quorum today, so thank you all for being here. First up, we've got approval of the minutes. Hopefully you got the minutes. We're able to read through them. I'll entertain a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, first up, if I pronounce this incorrectly, I apologize. Mahmood Shorman, YRM LLC, which is 10-A-24-TOR. If we could get a staff report, please.
This is a request to rezone a 12,495 square foot property located on the east side of Level Road and north side of High Meadow Drive from plain residential with up to 3 dwelling units an acre and technology overlay to office, medical, and related services and technology overlay. The subject property is at the entrance of an established residential neighborhood. Access is via High Meadow Drive, a local street with a 22-foot pavement width within a 60-foot right-of-way. For some background on the property, this is the third, it has been rezoned, or this is the third rezoning request in the last 3 years. In 2021, it was rezoned from OB to planned commercial and low-density residential, and then rezoned again in 2022 with planned residential with up to 3 dwelling units an acre. The TO zone was retained in both rezonings. The surrounding area has a mix of residential, commercial, and office developments along Level Road. In 2023, the subject property was subdivided into 3 lots, and 2 single-family homes were constructed on the 2 newly created lots adjacent to the east of the subject property. The subject property's place type is corridor mixed use and hillside protection of the Knox County Comprehensive Plan. The OB zone is listed as directly related to this place type, and the allowed uses in the OB zone align with its intent. The OB zone is intended to provide for professional and business offices and related activities in centralized, compact locations. It allows uses similar to others in the vicinity and is generally considered a transitional use. However, some of the allowed uses would be problematic for this site, such as clinics or multifamily developments with up to 12 dwelling units an acre, which on this property could yield about 3 dwellings. This property is only 0.29 acres in size, so space is limited. A non-residential use would be challenging to fit on the property while meeting the setback, landscaping, and parking requirements of the Ttcda guidelines and the Knox County Code. Between the building and the required parking, the Ttcda development metrics about the ground area coverage and impervious area coverage may be challenging to meet. The potential adverse effects of the rezoning do not comply with the Comprehensive Plan's Implementation Policy 2 to ensure that new development is sensitive to the existing community character. The needed parking for most service-oriented and office uses could lead to on-street parking, which could disrupt the neighborhood's residential character and bring non-residential traffic to High Meadow Drive, a residential street solely intended to provide access to and from the neighborhood. Staff recommends denying the OB zone because it would be an encroachment of a non-residential zone at the entrance to a residential subdivision. The technology overlay would be retained.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? All right, is there anyone here to speak for or against? All right, if you please give us your name and an address, please.
I'm Dr. Shorman. I'm the one who applied for the rezoning. My address is 12523 Limerick Lane. I live in Farragut. And I don't know if she mentioned that I also own all the property north of this small area, the 6 acres. And I think at one point when we start working on those areas, the access doesn't have to be from the High Meadows. It can be from the other end of the lot. And I don't know if she mentioned anything about that. I met with Kelsey, right? And her staff before I even applied, and they encouraged me to apply thinking that this is amenable. I didn't want to spend $1,000 if I didn't have to. And I explained to them what we have and what is the plan for the PCTO area, the one in purple that most likely is going to be small buildings with commercial lower and higher upper. And they said that's within the zoning for this area. So if the issue is concern about the entryway from the high meadows, we don't have to use that. We can use the other end of the property. It's also my property. And if there's any other questions, I'm more than happy to address them, because as she mentioned, the way it is now, it's not usable, and I'm paying property tax on this for 2 years as commercial, and I reached out to the county clerk, and they said there's nothing to be done about that. So for 2 years in a row, including this year, third one now, I'm paying commercial property tax on this small lot that I'm not really using for anything.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
I have questions. How is he paying commercial property tax when it's planned residential?
I have no idea. I have this with me. You can look at it, and I would appreciate somebody helping me with that. Because she said it was commercial. We asked for the rezoning to make it residential to build the houses, and they never changed the zoning.
So what are you wanting to build on this property?
A small doctor's office.
So, okay, my question is, you said, and I pulled this up, you do own several large parcels that are commercial.
Next
North.
to it, yeah, everything north is ours.
So I guess my question is, would you consider coming back before Planning Commission and including those parcels and showing where you want to access? I don't support you putting a commercial business there on the corner. I wouldn't have a problem with you doing it on some of the other parcels that you own. But I'm just wondering if maybe if you came back with a different approach, including those parcels, I don't know if that's even doable. Just a thought.
Yeah.
But I do agree with the staff's recommendation that
So I wish they
It
told
should
me that
stay.
and saved me the $1,000 and me coming here twice for this. Because I came and asked for recommendations and guidance. This is not what I do for a living. And I'm learning this as I go. And we sat upstairs on the 4th floor with their laptop, and they showed me everything. And they were the ones who recommended the OB rezoning. I didn't know what we needed to do at the time. So if they knew from the get-go that that's not feasible, they could have saved me the time and the effort and the money. And then I have to contend with this commercial zoning sales tax property tax that I'm asked to pay for every year for 3 years now.
Well, I do think, and Senior Law Director, you can tell us, I do think that if we want it sent back, we can actually waive the fee
Well,
if we did that.
the fee goes to the planning commission, doesn't it?
It does.
So I think we can recommend that a planning commission, to the extent that he paid a fee to be here, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the fees go to staff time. So there was a planning commission case that goes for this and a Ttcda. So those fees went to both of that. And a lot of times when we're meeting with someone and they let us know what they want to do, we tell you, well, this is the zoning that you would need to ask for, which isn't really the same as us saying, we will recommend approval for that. You know, we try to be really careful and intentional in those meetings, not to say whether or not we would approve something, because it's never, we sit with all of staff and make those determinations. So if that was misleading, I do apologize, but it was more just kind of letting you know if what you want to do is the clinic, this is the zone you would need to request, and then you need to make your case before the boards. So
Is there anything on that property now?
No.
You need to go talk to the property assessor's office and find out why they've got that assessed as commercial. I don't understand why they would do that either. They base it on the use, not necessarily what it's zoned as. And if there's nothing on it, so it's not being used commercially, it shouldn't, I wouldn't think, be assessed at commercial rates. So you probably need to talk to somebody at the property assessor's office and ask what their reasoning is for
For
that.
2 years we did that, and I think part of it is, part of that lot was commercial, and then to make it even, looks like the builder, when he requested the change, it was combined with the residential, and they chose to keep it as commercial for the property tax purposes, it seems. And there's nothing that can change that. I was told twice on the phone. And every year I get this, I make a phone call and say, like, this is an empty lot. It's zoned residential. We are not using it for anything. And we still ask to pay the property tax as commercial. And that they didn't even say anything. They just say commercial here. So this is one thing. And the other thing is, your good point, is if at one point we decide to do something with the north and we have a different access to the small lot, if that's going to change something. So instead of us saying, no, can we postpone the whole thing until something is happening so I wouldn't lose the $1,000? Would that work at least?
So when we look at rezonings, we're not really supposed to look at the specific use that the applicant intends, because if you did sell the property, someone could come behind you and put any use that's allowed by right on that piece of property. So I think our concern was partly the access, but partly also just the size of the parcel, and understanding that, with the Ttcda guidelines, there's a max limit on impervious ratio, area ratio, and then the floor area ratio, the ground area coverage, those kinds of things, plus the parking. You'd have such a small building by the time you met those metrics that I don't know if it would really behoove you to put that there. So that was one of the reasons I think we gave you the guidelines and told you to take a look at all of those things, because all of those calculations kind of come into play as to what would be feasible for the property. And I don't know that even if you got it, that you would be able to, the zoning, that you would be able to do what you wanted to do without getting a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals or something like that for.
Yeah, we can make it as small as we need to. It's just not losing a lot that I'm paying for, and I'm not using anything for it. I don't think anybody will buy it off me the way it is, because there's nothing to do with the lot.
Yeah,
So if that's a concern, we can make it as small as we need, as narrow as we need. Anything not to leave it like this.
Right. So that's up to the board's determination. So the staff, as Kelsey stated, the reasons were because it's at an entry to a residential neighborhood, and so a non-residential use right there would be an encroachment. It's different from the previous commercial zoning that was there because these properties were subdivided, so it was a larger piece that felt like it was more of those parcels to the north. So once those were subdivided off and developed as residential, it kind of brought that residential around that corner closer to Level Road, and then it also kind of cut that property into a really small piece. So that's kind of all the reasoning. But again, that's just our recommendation, and now this body can deliberate on all of those things.
Yeah, Dr. Shorman, not a requirement whenever you come before this board. Don't know if you've had any discussions with design professionals, a civil engineer, an attorney that actually deals with land and real estate. Those are some of the individuals that can really help to give you some guidance. I work for a developer, and I'm not asking you to come to me, but going to somebody that does this on a regular basis, because you had previously said you really don't have that much knowledge. It's not the world that you live in. That might be another option for you to go to, is to go to somebody who is a professional that deals with this on a regular basis to help give you some guidance on how to move forward with this piece of property. So not a requirement, just.
Thank you for the advice. This is excellent advice. We were planning to do that for the bigger 6 acres lot. But for that small, tiny one, I thought coming to the ladies here and get some guidance will do like what I needed. And I just wanted to know if there is something that can be done. And when they reviewed everything I presented at the time, they thought something like an OB1 is feasible. If they told me the access will be an issue or the size would be, I wouldn't be here. Nobody will be bothered about this. But since I was given the impression that it's doable if we pay some money and just show up for a meeting, and even if Kelsey remembers, I called her on Friday, said if the recommendation is not to approve it, is there a reason why I need to cancel clinic today and show up at 4? She said, well, this is our recommendation. The board may not follow that recommendation. So again, this is a new thing I'm learning as I go. Hopefully you don't have to see me again, because the bigger parcel is already approved for a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But now I just want to get some direction, because there's another meeting on the 3rd, it seems, and I don't want to also cancel clinics and come if there's no point of me coming.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I make the motion to deny per staff's recommendation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the day.
All right. Moving on. Tennessee Sign Company, Wyatt Weatherby, 10-A-24-TOS. If we can get a staff report, please.
This is a request for approval of a new monument sign at 10308 Cogdale Road, located on the west side of Cogdale Road, south of Lexington Drive, for the Decks and Docks Company, the sole occupant of the building. The property is split by the city and county boundary line. The surrounding area largely consists of commercial, industrial, and office uses. The property is zoned Business and Manufacturing and Technology Overlay in the county and Highway Commercial and Technology Park Overlay in the city. The proposed sign is a non-illuminated two-sided V-shaped sign with white aluminum leg posts. The sign panels will be composed of aluminum with a vinyl application and a matte finish. The height of the signage structure is 6 feet. The maximum allowable square footage for the sign message area is 57 square feet, based on the building's linear frontage of 57 feet. Per Ttcda guidelines, the supporting structure has an allowable 85.5 square feet. The proposed total area for the sign structure is 66 square feet, and the total message area for both panels is approximately 44 square feet, which is well within the allowable square footage. Note that the proposed sign has 4 colors: white, yellow, light blue, and navy. The number of sign colors may exceed 3 where it is desirable to preserve the corporate image. Because the 4 colors are part of the business logo and integral to the business's image, they comply with the Ttcda guidelines. The sign will be placed at the driveway entrance at Cogdale Road 20 feet from the right-of-way. The placement of the sign complies with Ttcda guidelines 4.3.2, requiring signs to be placed a minimum of 20 feet from the public right-of-way. Based on the application and plans as submitted, staff recommends approval of a certificate of appropriateness for a sign permit for the proposed monument sign with the following condition: meeting all relevant requirements of the Knox County zoning ordinance as appropriate.
All right, any questions for staff? All right, is there anyone here to speak for or against? Please give us your name and your address, please.
Mike A. Andrews, 3917 Cottonseed Court. I'm here representing Wyatt. He wasn't able to make it this evening, so I'm here instead. But you guys pretty much hit it right on the head with your description of the sign. It's exactly what we're proposing is what was mentioned. And the 4 colors seems to be allowable, which was the only real issue I thought we were going to have. But I see the setback too is pretty detailed and available. We can do it. But
Okay.
that's all I really have to say about it. I can answer any questions if anybody has any.
All right, any questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation of the certificate of appropriateness with one condition.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time this evening.
Thank you. All right, next up, Diane's View, which is 10-A-24-TOG. And we don't need a staff report on this. I think this is a postponement for 30 days. Is that correct? All right. So any questions? No? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to postpone for 30 days.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Yeah. All right. So just for the record, Ryan's going to recuse himself on this. So Masana Investments, 10-A-24-TOB. Can we get a staff report, please?
Let's see. This is a request for a building permit for an attached residential subdivision. We'll have 8 waiver requests at George White Road and Pellissippi Parkway. The zoning on this property is planned residential up to 5 dwelling units an acre, subject to one condition. The applicant will widen George White Road to 20 feet, including the final asphalt surface and striping, along the entirety of the property's frontage and south to Beaver Glade Lane prior to recording the plat. And you can see that distance approximately with the red line. The applicant proposes subdividing this 6.71 acre tract into 33 lots with attached houses. The development will have a density of 4.92 dwelling units an acre. The guidelines do not anticipate townhouses. They're not applicable to single-family homes or duplexes, but they are applicable to multifamily developments. Townhouses on individual lots kind of lie somewhere in the middle of this range, but since they are not exempt, they will be reviewed by this board. And this decision today will be a recommendation to the Planning Commission on Thursday. The attached houses are on individual lots. There are 2 waivers requested on this slide, one for the ground area coverage and the floor area ratio. The guidelines were crafted for uses like office warehouses and business parks. So when the guidelines were updated in 2011, the townhome developments on individual lots were not considered, and many of those standards are not applicable, nor do they address the unique nature of a townhouse lot. So when looking at the property as a whole, the ground area coverage is 13.7%, and the floor area ratio is 27.4%, and the impervious area ratio is 23.8%. So because of this, staff will support the waivers to increase the ground area coverage from 25% to 50%, and the floor area ratio from 30% to 100%. The townhouses are 2 stories with 2,420 square feet of floor area. There are 2 types of elevations that have been provided. This elevation A3 is a mostly vinyl siding with 2 feet of stone veneer along the ground floor of the building with a pitched shingle roof. And the other elevation, A5, is identical, except they're increasing the stone veneer to 8 feet along the ground floor. All the townhomes are 3-bedroom units with 1-car garages, covered front porches, and concrete back patios. The buildings will step back a few feet every couple of buildings to break up the flat exterior, and they will be subdued in color. The applicant is requesting a waiver for the 100-foot setback that's required when the property is adjacent to residential zones. So this setback is more appropriate when commercial or industrial development is adjacent to residential uses. So staff will support this waiver since these townhomes are residential uses on a similar scale to single-family homes. The PR base zone has a 35-foot peripheral setback, which is shown in green. And the townhouses are slightly more intensive than single-family homes, so a landscape screen has been provided within this area as a buffer between the uses. There's also a waiver for the front yard setback for a 2-story building from 70 feet to 35 feet. And there's a parking lot setback as a landscaped area of 20 feet is required between the parking and the right-of-way. This guideline was intended for parking lots and not the individual street parking spaces that are shown at the front. There's about 3 on-street parking spaces. So in this case, the applicant has provided landscaping around those parking spaces. So there's the waiver to eliminate a 20-foot front landscaped yard. So the townhouses will not be facing the public right-of-way like most of the commercial or industrial buildings do. They're going to face the internal street system. So we're not treating George White Road as the front, but the private right-of-way on the property. The entrance road will also be landscaped with trees. A detailed landscape plan has been provided that preserves existing vegetation. It provides landscape buffers between adjacent uses and includes trees along the entrance road and along all the parking areas. Landscape buffer B has been provided along the western and southern property lines adjacent to residential. This is a typical screen that's provided, and it's considered a dense screening that's 12 feet in width. The parking areas will have redbud trees and preserving mature trees on the rest of the property and at the entrance satisfies the rest of the guidelines. The landscape guidelines for buildings do not require waivers in this case and will not be applied to townhomes as they're on individual lots and the residents can create their own landscape plans. So additional and more stringent standards are applied in the hillside protection area within the technology overlay. The slope analysis determines how much land can be disturbed within the HP area. It's used as a recommendation during development plan review. However, Ttcda has its own HP requirements and compliance that's required. So the slope calculations of the HP plan are used as a basis for the Ttcda standards. So the application of the HP disturbance is considered exempt when the property has been previously disturbed. The front of the property on George White Road includes 5.71 acres within the hillside area. The plan proposes to disturb 3.2 acres, and this is within the slope analysis budget of 3.55 acres. So regarding the Ttcda guidelines, there are 3 waiver requests in this area. The applicant requests a waiver to increase the maximum building size per 2 acres from 5,000 square feet to 10,643 square feet. Staff will support this waiver because the ground area coverage, floor area ratio, and impervious area ratio within the hillside protection area have been met. The applicant's also requesting a waiver to the hillside and ridgetop guidelines on the slopes 15 to 24.99% to go above the 50% maximum land disturbance to 50.61 land disturbance. So the plan will disturb 1.5 acres within the hillside protection area. So that's less than 1% over the allowance. And additionally, 2.85 acres will remain undisturbed. And the last hillside protection waiver increases the disturbance budget within the HP area where slopes are greater than 25% from 0% to 22.82%. The plan will disturb approximately 0.71 acres of the HP area on these steep slopes. So staff will support this because some of those disturbances are due to road access, which the guidelines do accommodate for, and approximately 2.85 acres will remain undisturbed. So staff is recommending these actions to the waivers. We are recommending approval of all of the requested waivers and this certificate of appropriateness for the building permit, subject to 10 conditions.
Okay, she had to work really hard for that one. So, do we have any questions or comments?
Just comments, just to commend the staff. You all did a really good job at looking at this and protecting the adjacent property owners and in consideration. I just want to say thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone here to speak for or against? Please give us your name and your address, please.
Yeah, Trey Ridenauer, P.O. Box 11315, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37939.
All right. Any comments or anything?
No thanks, just that y'all recommend as per staff recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, really quickly, not
Okay.
a question, but a comment. I also want to
Okay.
thank you all for working with staff and also agreeing to the many conditions that we've placed on this. We appreciate it very much. And with that, I will make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
All right. Do we have a second? I'll second. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all.
All right. So we've got other business. So
No, that's, the fees. Yeah, you can click through.
So-
There's not a whole lot.
So I'll turn it over to staff and you can lead us through what, take it away.
Yeah, so these are our fees for 2025. They're not changing from 2024. This is what you all had in your packet last month. And you all were very generous in your praise of staff and wanting to consider what other jurisdictions do and looking at our fees. So we did do a study of other municipalities of similar size and other municipalities in the region and found that across the board, the smaller board fees tend to be pretty meager. The next slide has some of that. Not that you can see it, but yeah, we did look at it and we're pretty much in line with what a lot of other folks do. And I will say that a lot of the fees or a lot of the projects that you all get that are more complex tend to go to the Planning Commission as well. And those fees are a little more hefty. So that does tend to pay for, the staff time and resources and doing all these. And the difference between the two reports is pretty minimal when we're putting together the presentation and the reports. So hopefully that kind of answers the question of what everybody else is doing.
Have any questions or comments?
I was just taking a look through here. So it looks like we're pretty comparable.
Yep.
So just a weird question. Why do you think Nashville, theirs is so hefty? Are they including everything in one fee?
We really were, their site is not very user-friendly. So we reached out to them for more information and it kind of got trips and nuggets.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to tell. Their fees are a lot more than ours, kind of across the board. And I think that they are using fees to try to discourage certain things. For example, for rezoning and a plan amendment, if you want to do a plan amendment, they range anywhere from, was it 1,500 up to 9,000, depending on what you were wanting to do. So I think that,
Kind of in favor of that.
yeah, I think they're trying to use that as a limitation. So I don't know that it'd be fair to compare us to them at this point.
So the fees that we're looking at, are these just for TTCDA, correct?
No, TTCD is a state board, so we're the only one. So the most comparable thing I could find was like HCCs and DRBs,
Okay.
which tend to have kind of smaller developments. Sometimes they'll have some commercial developments and things like that. Those boards, the DRB tends to work a lot with architects and engineers and getting site plans for downtown areas. So those projects can range in size quite a bit. And then Historic Zoning Commission, those tend to be smaller projects by homeowners with like local architects that specialize in residential development. But those are both boards that have smaller fees. So kind of in line with what we see. And again, those more complex cases we're getting the fees from the Planning Commission. So it'd almost be like double dipping to have those be a little bit heavier.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Thank you for doing this. This is very helpful.
absolutely.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Just as a reminder, we need to vote to approve it.
Gotcha. Got to keep me straight. All right, so I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Is that it? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.